Off the coast of Okinawa, on the morning of April 16, 1945, a single American destroyer sat alone on the open sea. She was not a battleship. She was not a carrier. She was a thin-hulled destroyer, barely 376 feet long, with a crew of about 336 young men, most of them in their teens and early 20s. In the next 80 minutes, 22 Japanese aircraft would try to kill her. 6 of them would crash directly into her. 4 bombs would tear through her deck. Her rudder would jam, locking her into helpless circles. Her guns would be blasted off their mounts one by one. Her entire stern would become a burning, twisted ruin. Nearly a third of her crew would be killed or wounded. By every rule of war, that ship should have gone to the bottom of the Pacific. But she didn't. When it was over, and the sea finally went quiet, she was still there, battered beyond recognition, on fire, sinking at the stern, but still floating, still fighting. The Navy would call it one of the great sea epics of the war. The men who survived it would give their ship a name that stuck forever: the ship that would not die. This is the story of the USS Laffey. To understand what happened to the Laffey, you have to understand where the war was in the spring of 1945. Japan was losing. Her navy had been shattered. Her cities were burning under American bombers. Her army was being pushed back across the Pacific, island by island. But Japan was not surrendering. On April 1, 1945, American forces landed on Okinawa, a small island just 350 miles from the Japanese mainland. If the Americans took Okinawa, they would have a launching pad for the invasion of Japan itself. For Japan, this was the last gate, and they would defend it with a weapon unlike anything in modern warfare: the kamikaze, the divine wind. Pilots who deliberately crashed their bomb-laden aircraft into American ships, trading one life for the chance to sink a warship and hundreds of sailors. At Okinawa, the Japanese didn't send kamikazes one at a time. They sent them in massive, coordinated waves, an operation they called Kikusui, floating chrysanthemums. Hundreds of aircraft at once, sweeping down from the north, aimed at the vast American fleet supporting the invasion. And to protect that fleet, the U.S. Navy built an invisible wall around Okinawa, a ring of radar picket stations, 16 positions encircling the island. At each one, a small handful of ships, usually a destroyer and a few support craft, would sit far out ahead of the main fleet. Their job was simple and terrible. Use their radar to spot incoming Japanese aircraft early, warn the fleet, and direct fighters to intercept. The problem was obvious to every sailor assigned to them. If you were the first to see the enemy, you were also the first the enemy would see. The radar picket stations became the most dangerous duty in the entire United States Navy. The USS Laffey was an Allen M. Sumner-class destroyer, built at Bath Iron Works in Maine and commissioned in February 1944. She was the second ship to carry the name. The first Laffey had been sunk in a brutal night battle off Guadalcanal in 1942. Both ships were named for Bartlett Laffey, a sailor who had earned the Medal of Honor during the American Civil War. It was a name that already carried the weight of sacrifice. By April 1945, this second Laffey was no green, untested ship. She was a veteran. In June 1944, she had been off the coast of Normandy on D-Day, pounding German shore batteries and shielding the troops landing on the beaches. Then she was sent to the other side of the world, to the Pacific. She fought at Iwo Jima. She screened the fleet in the Philippines. She plucked downed airmen out of the sea. Her crew had seen combat, and they were good at their jobs. Her commanding officer was Commander Frederick Julian Beckton, a determined, respected officer who had already survived having a ship shot out from under him earlier in the war. Beckton knew exactly how dangerous the Pacific had become, and he had drilled his crew relentlessly, again and again, until their gunnery and damage control were second nature. He would need every bit of that training, because in a matter of days, the Laffey would be sent to the deadliest spot on the map. Radar Picket Station Number 1. Of all 16 radar picket stations ringing Okinawa, one was worse than the rest. Radar Picket Station 1, RP-1, sat roughly 50 miles due north of Okinawa, straight in the path between the American fleet and the Japanese airfields on Kyushu. It was the closest station to Japan, the very tip of the spear. Every wave of kamikazes heading south had to pass over it first. On April 15, 1945, the Laffey took up position at RP-1. She wasn't alone. She was supported by a few smaller landing craft fitted out as gunboats and by a rotating combat air patrol of American fighters overhead. But out there, 50 miles from the fleet, everyone understood the truth. If a big raid came, they would face the first and heaviest blow, and help might be minutes away that they didn't have. That first day gave them a taste of it. The Laffey joined in beating back a Japanese air attack, and across the picket line more than a dozen enemy aircraft were shot down. The crew slept in snatches at their battle stations that night. Everyone could feel it coming. The pickets had been getting hammered for days, ships shot to pieces, crews decimated, some vessels sunk outright. Commander Becton walked his ship, checked his gun crews, and made sure every man knew his job. There was nothing left to do but wait for the dawn. When the sun came up on April 16th, the radar screens began to fill. The morning of April 16th, 1945 began before 6 a.m., with the Laffey heading out to her station under the cover of a small two-plane combat air patrol. For a while, it was quiet. Then around 8:30, the radar operators saw it, a huge formation building to the north. Not a few aircraft. Somewhere around 50 Japanese planes were inbound, and they were heading straight for the picket line. General quarters. Every man to battle stations. The first attackers were Judy dive bombers, coming in fast and low over the water. The Laffey's gunners were ready. Her 5-inch guns, her 40mm and 20mm cannons opened up, throwing a wall of steel into the sky. The first plane was hit and went down, then another, then another. In the opening minutes of the battle, the Laffey's gunnery was almost flawless, knocking down attacker after attacker before they could reach her. For a few short minutes, it looked like the crew might hold them all off. But this was not going to be a few planes. This was a coordinated swarm, and the Japanese pilots had picked their target. Out of that mass of aircraft, 22 of them peeled off and bore in on a single ship, the Laffey. They came from every direction at once, low off the bow, high off the beam, out of the sun. More than the ship's guns could possibly track at the same time. And now the crew faced the nightmare every picket sailor dreaded. Too many, from too many angles, all at once. The next 80 minutes would become legend. The attacks came in relentless, overlapping waves. The gunners couldn't reload fast enough. As soon as they splashed one plane, 2 more were rolling in. And then the ship's luck began to run out. The first kamikaze that got through slammed into the Laffey, then another, then bombs, one after another, punching into her decks and exploding. Fires erupted across the ship. Smoke poured into the sky, marking her position like a beacon and drawing even more attackers toward the kill. The hits piled up with brutal speed. Her aftergun mounts were smashed and knocked out of action. A kamikaze strike jammed her rudder hard over, locking it at roughly 26 degrees, and now the Laffey could no longer steer. She was dragged into a slow, helpless circle, unable to turn into the attacks, unable to run. Her entire stern became an inferno. Ammunition began cooking off in the flames. Whole gun crews were wiped out at their posts, and other sailors ran through the fire to take their places, firing the guns by hand when the power failed. On the bridge, officers begged Commander Becton to consider abandoning ship. His answer became famous. He would not abandon the Laffey, he said, as long as a single gun would still fire, and her guns kept firing. Even as she burned, even as she circled helplessly, even as death came screaming out of the sky again and again and again. What saved the Laffey was not luck. It was her people. While the gunners fought the sky, Damage control parties fought the ship itself. They dragged fire hoses into the flames as water pressure failed around them. They shored up buckling bulkheads to keep the sea out. They pulled wounded shipmates from wreckage and smoke, and hospital corpsmen worked without pause amid the carnage. Gun crews whose mounts had lost power cranked and loaded their weapons by hand, refusing to stop. Young sailors who had trained for months under Becton's relentless drills now did exactly what they'd been taught, automatically, under fire, with the ship dying around them. And they were not entirely alone. Overhead, American fighter pilots of the Combat Air Patrol threw themselves into the swarm, chasing kamikazes right down onto the water, some pursuing the enemy so low and so hard they clipped the Laffey's own rigging. The small support gunboats nearby added their fire to the defense, and when it was over, closed in to help. Together, they clawed the Laffey back from the edge. One by one, the attackers were shot down, driven off, or simply ran out. The gunners of the Laffey, before the day was done, were credited with destroying 9 enemy aircraft on their own. And then, finally, the sky was empty. When the last plane was gone, the survivors looked at what was left of their ship. The Laffey had been struck by 6 kamikaze crashes and 4 bombs, plus strafing and a series of near misses, an amount of punishment almost no destroyer was ever expected to survive. Her stern was shattered and awash. Her rudder was jammed. Fires still burned. But she was floating. The cost was terrible. 32 of her sailors were dead. 71 more were wounded. Over 100 casualties out of a crew of about 336. In a little over an hour, a third of the men aboard had been killed or hurt. But the ship was alive. Slowly, painfully, she was taken under tow and brought back toward the fleet, her exhausted crew still fighting fires and caring for the wounded every mile of the way. Against everything the Japanese had thrown at her, one of the most concentrated air attacks ever aimed at a single ship in the history of naval warfare, the Laffey had refused to sink. If the crew of the Laffey earned your respect today, do one thing for them. Subscribe, so their story, and stories like it, don't get forgotten. And watch this next. The Laffey did not just survive Okinawa. She was patched up, brought home, repaired, and returned to service. She would go on to serve for decades more, through Korea and into the Cold War, before she was finally retired. Out of that 80 minutes of hell off radar Picket Station 1, her crew earned a name that history never let go: the ship that would not die. Her captain, Frederick Becton, would later tell the story in a book by that very title. Today, you can still stand on her decks. The USS Laffey is preserved as a museum ship at Patriots Point in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, a National Historic Landmark and one of the last of her kind still afloat. Visitors walk the same steel where those young men stood their ground against an entire sky full of death. Because in the end, the Laffey's story was never really about a ship. Ships are steel and rivets. What would not die that day was the will of the men aboard her. Ordinary sailors who, when the impossible came for them, simply refused to let go. 22 aircraft, 80 minutes, one destroyer that would not die.